Rated mature audiences only. Viewer discretion is advised.
Million patients and found that the vaccinated group was actually 7 times more likely to get infected with COVID than the people who had gotten COVID naturally.
Senator, I'd have to get back to you on that one. I'm not familiar with that study.
Well, you think you might want to be if you're going to travel the country insulting the millions of Americans, including NBA star Jonathan Isaac, who have had COVID, recovered, look at a study with 2.5 million people and say, well, you know what? It looks like my immunity is as good as the vaccine or not. And in a free country, maybe I ought to be able to make that decision. Instead, you've chosen to travel the country calling people like Jonathan Isaac and others, myself included, flat earthers.
Broadcasting from the Big Peach of Atlanta, Georgia. A show unfiltered, unscripted, raw. The Patriot Angle Podcast.
Hey guys, welcome to today's show. Welcome. As you heard in the opening here on the podcast, I wanted to plug in more saga. Yes, the COVID hysteria yet continues, folks. When will it end? Well, we all remember just about 2.5 years ago that we only had 2 weeks to flatten the curve. Right, folks? Remember all that? Remember that from the doctor himself, Dr. Doom, Fauci? Don't worry, folks. It's just going to take 2 weeks. We'll flatten the curve and we'll be back to normalcy in the country. Yeah, that was a lie. That was a lie. Because guess what? 2 weeks, folks, turned into almost damn near 2.5, 3 years. And here we are, once again, with more variants than damn near hurricane names. Yeah. Hence the podcast episode. I decided to call it, are we starting to name the variants by the names that we are naming hurricanes? Because it's odd that, like every other day, right? Every other day leading to like a week, we're into a new variant, a new name, right? From this COVID-19 hysteria. And yet no one has the answers to when this pandemic or plandemic, of what I've been calling it, seems to end. It seems like this is the new norm, right? Masking, 6 feet. You need a fucking passport or some type of paperwork to go into a doctor's office, a sporting event, a restaurant in some states, for some cases, right? I mean, this is like, turning into a modern day Nazi Germany. I've said this on my podcast episode before, many episodes prior to this one, that America's turning into a Nazi Germany. Well, let's listen into more of Senator Ron Paul grilling the people behind this COVID-19 hysteria. Literally, we the people, folks, we want the freaking answers, and we want them now. Listen to more of Senator Ron Paul.
I've worked over 30 years on health policy.
You're not a medical doctor. Do you have a science degree? And yet you travel the country calling people flat earthers who have had COVID, looked at studies of millions of people, and made their own personal decision that their immunity they naturally acquired is sufficient. But you presume somehow to tell over 100 million Americans who have survived COVID that we have no right to determine our own medical care. You alone are on high, and you've made these decisions, a lawyer with no scientific background, no medical degree. This is an arrogance coupled with an authoritarianism that is unseemly and un-American. You, sir, are the one ignoring the science. The vast preponderance of scientific studies, dozens and dozens, show robust, long-lasting immunity after COVID infection. Even the CDC does not recommend measles vaccine if you have measles immunity. The same was true for smallpox. But you ignore history and science to shame the flat earthers, as you call them. You should be ashamed of yourself and apologize to the American people for being dishonest about naturally acquired immunity.
Yeah, let me stop it right there, guys. This is Senator Ron Paul in Congress. Folks, this is going back about 6 days ago. But I wanted to play catch up here on the podcast here to allow the folks just literally what's going on in Congress. That this is Dr. Anthony Fauci's lawyer. Now, he's trying to outsmart the Senator, Ron Paul, in Congress. But, folks, he's instantly regretting it. Because, folks, this is a lawyer, folks, with no medical background, and yet anything to back any type of scientific fact regarding COVID-19. This is him in Congress trying to pretty much outwit the senator. So are we going to see like just in breaking news, excuse me, that Judicial Watch files lawsuits against Dr. Fauci and his HHS for this action? Are we going to see that? Are we going to see that in the coming weeks? That possibly Dr. Anthony Fauci, if you want to call him a doctor anyway, I think he's a complete hack if you ask me, will be tried for American treason for not only this country, but he should be tried for fucking treason for the entire planet. He has put the entire planet at risk for misinformation, for one, to lying to the American people on series of different events regarding COVID-19 and its variants. Folks, we are putting, do you understand this now? That this administration, this Biden administration, is putting the fate in the hands of one man that controls not only all of the CDC, but is now controlling the society and the health well-being of America. Seriously, anything that this doctor says, the freaking Biden administration literally kisses the ass and worships the ground of this guy. It's terrible, folks, what's going on. Terrible. Regardless how disgusting and criminal someone can be, there is always a disgusting and cold-blooded lawyer who will defend him. Literally. It's like a freaking cult, if you ask me. Literally a cult. Anytime a person has to have a hard time answering a yes or no question, that most definitely, folks, is a clear sign of guilt. If you pay attention to the sound clip here on the podcast. Folks, let me just ask one question here on the show. How is it that we allow politicians to simply not answer simple questions? Seriously, you want to call this guy a politician, a lawmaker, whatever. They should be thrown in jail for not answering such questions. And yet, Congress allows this over and over and over again. It's like a soap opera. Literally, like a clown show of what's going on. Listen to more of this garbage, folks.
For people to choose vaccination? So do I. You want to lessen vaccine hesitancy? So do I. You want to have that happen? Quit lying to people about naturally acquired immunity. Quit lording it over people, acting as if these people are deplorable and unwashed. Try persuasion instead of government cudgels. Try humility instead of arrogance. Try freedom instead of coercion. But most of all, try understanding that there's no more basic medical right than deciding what we inject into our bodies. Today, after hearing that millions of people in a study show without a doubt that there's a great deal of immunity from getting it naturally, do you want to apologize to the 100 million Americans who suffered through COVID, survived, have immunity, and yet you want to hold them down and vaccinate them? Do you want to apologize for calling those people flat earthers?
Yeah. Thank you, Ron Paul, for your persistence in debunking this ridiculous scam in America. Folks, I want to apologize with the coughing here on the show. I'm still battling some seasonal allergies. But you know what? It's nice to see a man with the brains and balls, like Senator Ron Paul, to speak up and point out all of the bullshit of what's going on in this country. Because, folks, it makes me sick as a fellow patriot of this nation to see all the lies, bullshit, and scams of what this government is putting us through. It's a damn shame what Americans such as myself and others have to go through in this 21st century called America. With more on this topic, folks, we'll be right back after these words. Don't go anywhere.
Patriot. Unfiltered. Raw.
Politicians prospered. The establishment protected itself, but not the citizens of our country. Their victories have not been your victories. Their triumphs have not been your triumphs. That all changes starting right here and right now. From this day forward, a new vision will govern our land. It's going to be only America first, by American and hire American. No challenge can match the heart and fight and spirit of America. We will not fail. Our country will thrive and prosper again. We will reinforce old alliances and form new ones and unite the civilized world against radical Islamic terrorism, which we will eradicate completely from the face of the earth. We will be protected by the great men and women of our military and law enforcement. We will bring back our jobs. We will bring back our borders. We will bring back our wealth. And we will bring back our dreams. We will face challenges. We will confront hardships. But we will get the job done. Together, we will determine the course of America and the world for many, many years to come. This moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Once upon a time at the magical Everly Estate, landscaper Larry and his trusty crew were delayed when the new kid totaled his truck.
Timber.
Fortunately, they were covered by Progressive, so it was a happy ending for almost everyone.
Governor, Orange County's mayor has been very critical with the way he's responding to the surge. He wants to see if you will be promoting things like vaccination, social distancing, mask wearing instead of just the treatment.
I can tell you this. We are not letting anybody impose restrictions or mandates on the people of Florida. That is totally off the table. That is not going to stand. You can make decisions for yourself and your family that you see fit. To impose social distancing mandates with a variant that is airborne, go read the MIT study that they did in 2020, which says if you have an aerosolized airborne pathogen, 3-6 feet, it's obsolete. If you're in an area with something, it's going to be in the air. That's just the reality with Omicron. It is way, way, way more contagious. Now, it's much less pathogenic than Delta. There's no question about that, too. But the notion that we would be imposing any type of mandates or restrictions on people is insane. I cannot believe they're closing schools in these other states. I mean, have we learned nothing throughout this whole time? They're sacrificing these poor, and most of them are poor and low-income kids that are bearing the brunt of this, and they're doing that for no scientific reason. It's all politics, and it's just fundamentally wrong. So we're not doing that. Now, what are we doing? We've been talking about the treatments. We had our treatments cut dramatically. We've had a plan in place for many months that if we did see an increase, we would be able to have sites stood up within 24 hours. We can do that. We've been talking about the need, and fortunately, as of now, HHS has finally agreed to fulfill what we want. And so we haven't gotten it yet,
But when we do, literally the next day, you'll have additional sites throughout the state of Florida. And so that's something that's very important. Also, we found that the federal government promised that it was going to send a lot of these at-home rapid tests out to individual Americans who wanted them. They haven't sent anything that we've seen. So we said, okay, well, we're going to do, we've acquired some, we're going to acquire more. We're going to start with our long-term care facilities for our elderly, and then we're going to try to focus it on the senior population because, you know, I don't want somebody that's 75 to have to wait in line for an hour, especially when a lot of the people that are testing are more low-risk people. So we are going to do that because the federal government hasn't come through with that, and we're happy to do it. I mean, obviously we shouldn't have had to do it because they've made a lot of promises in that regard, but we will. And then we're also going to be putting up some updated testing guidelines, not mandates or requirements. I mean, if you want to go into the drugstore and buy 15 tests for yourself to have, you're free to do that. But what these guidelines are going to point out is what is high value testing versus what is low value testing.
All right, folks, that was Mega Governor Ron DeSantis literally firing back with this whole COVID hysteria. Guys, I want to allow the listeners that, yeah, I've been flip-flopping back and forth from first Ron Paul, literally firing back at Anthony Fauci's lawyer in Congress earlier in the episode, and then going to Ron DeSantis. Guys, these are Republican leaderships, right, in government that is fed up with this COVID hysteria nonsense. And I stand by Ron Paul and Governor DeSantis that this is not going to stand. Literally, DeSantis firing back at the Democratic mayor of Orange County, Florida, Mayor Jerry Demings, over the COVID-19 policy. Folks, it's your God-given right. If you want to get a test, get a test. If you want to get the vaccine and you think it's going to make you feel safe and effective, go ahead. Which a lot of scientific data is proven that even people vaccinated and people that have, 1, 2, what are they up to, like 4 or 5 booster shots by now, are still getting the damn thing. So, but, guys, if you want to do all that, you want to put a mask on, you want to live in a bubble for the rest of your life, go ahead. I'm sorry I'm saying it like that, but go ahead. Go ahead. You should be able to live the life that you want to, not the federal government telling you how to live your damn life. I'm telling you, folks. Literally. What have we learned through all of this? Seriously. Let me ask that question once again. What have we learned through all of this for the last 2.5 going on 3 years now? We know to wash your hands. We know to stay away from people that look sick or terminally ill. We know how to do all that. We've learned this, folks, from an early age and childhood. Or at least some of us should have learned that. But I can tell you right now, what I've learned through all of this, folks, the true meaning behind this plandemic is we know that no one ever seizes power with the intention of relinquishing it. And what I mean by that is that the people that truly want power in this world will do anything to retain that power. Folks, this is the same outtake that once Cuba has seen before they went full on socialist or communist, for that matter. Venezuela, another country, suffered great tensions of socialism turned communism. Another country, China. Folks, we're heading down the same path as these countries. Folks, we already have just one party. They go by two names, but in truth, they are one and the same. A Republican and a Democrat are the same type of people. Excuse me, let me get a glass of water. Much better. Folks, no matter a Republican or a Democrat, you're still going to get the same outtake between both parties. Now, true leadership will always lead for the American people of what's best for the American people. And I can tell you right now, folks, we are not getting what's for the best of the American people. We are being thrown down our throats of vaccines, masking, social distance, lockdowns. Folks, this country is going full-blown socialist, almost damn near a communist country under this leadership we have in the White House. We are now in a full year of presidency under Biden. And look what the country has become. It's transforming into a socialist country. And don't get me started with the variants, because that's what this show is mainly about, the variants. The variants, folks, are literally, it's getting out of control. I mean, they're literally naming these things. I mean, whoever's in charge of naming bacteria and viruses has a lot of time on their hands. A lot. But compared to you, me, the next person next to you, they're just an average Joe, right? An average Joe that's literally having fun with all of this crap. All of it. Folks, this has to end. It has to end. When will it end? Hell, we don't know. But I can tell you right now, folks, it's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. A lot worse. Like I said, you're seeing new variants after new variants of these things. Literally, they don't want it to end. They don't want it to end. Before I get into the variants here, because I got a special sound clip I want to plug in towards the end of the show before we run out of time here. Is that, everybody remember Mike Rowe? Mike Rowe, right? He pretty much has a show, a podcast. And he also was on the show America's Dirtiest Jobs, right? Everybody knows Mike Rowe. Well, Mike Rowe, folks, went on the record saying now 4.5 million are quitting their jobs. And this is pretty much impacting like every American in this country because of the variants, the restrictions, the guidelines, all this crap, folks. You got to listen to this because this is crazy. This is Mike Rowe with Fox Business giving his insight on all this COVID hysteria. You got to listen to it, folks. Mike Rowe here on on Fox Business. Check this out, guys.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
In heaven, this little girl came up to me. She told me she died in your tummy.
The pain that I suffered watching my son that close to death.
We're in trouble. You call some friends and pray for him.
The hospital said that your son was not expected to survive.
He's been out there staring for hours.
You're the grandpa named Pop, right?
He died when I was about your age.
He's very nice.
You saw my grandfather? Where did you see him?
In heaven?
Is this the man you saw?
No, in heaven, everybody's young.
Is this him?
Yeah, that's him. That's Pop.
Honey, did you punch a kid in the nose?
They were making fun of Colton. Is he gonna get a spanking?
Heck no. She's gonna teach you to hit without hurting your knuckles. I want to believe him. But everything he talks about is impossible.
You saw heaven? What does it look like?
It's beautiful.
We all want to be supportive, but we can't have our town turned into a circus.
They don't believe me, do they?
Some people might be afraid to believe.
Don't you think we need to be talking about this life?
Do you think my son went to heaven?
You don't have to worry. He told me everything was all right.
He's making a difference. Haven't we already had a glimpse of something? In the first cry of a baby, the courage of a friend, the love of a mother, a father. I see it, so I believe it. Do you?
A record 4.5 million people either quit or changed jobs in November. Let's bring in Mike Rowe. He's the dirty jobs guy. Mike, bear with me, please, but I think this might be good news. People are quitting to climb the food chain looking for better wages. Where am I going wrong?
Well, you've always been a glass half full kind of guy, Stuart. I suppose that's one way to look at it, and I think it's probably a fair way to look at it. From my position as a guy who runs a foundation that's focused on debunking stigmas and stereotypes around the skilled trades, I've never seen anything like this. Not a week goes by where my foundation doesn't get a phone call from some association in charge of some industry that's struggling mightily to recruit. Just this month, I've heard from the energy industry, the flooring industry. You just go down the list one after the next. The restaurant industry, the cable and broadband industry, they are all struggling with the same basic problem, and that is how to make a more persuasive case for the opportunities that exist within their industries. And they're all talking to the same group of people who, for whatever reason, have, I think, changed their fundamental relationship with the definition of a good job. So, look, this is not just a conversation between a mismatch of skills, although I think the skills gap is a very real thing. This is a conversation about our workforce and the imbalanced nature of it and the way that that's going to impact every single American who shares my addiction to smooth roads, indoor plumbing, affordable electricity, and so forth.
So tell me, what is the new definition of a good job?
That, interestingly, is one of the few things that we can control. And it is within our individual control to make that very decision. Guidance counselors have to decide, teachers have to decide, parents have to decide. The thing we identify as aspirational will set the stage for virtually everything that follows it. Look, that was the whole point of Dirty Jobs. It was to show the country what very specific vocations look like, and then surprise people with the realities of what you can make on a jelly ball fishing boat, for instance, or putting down an epoxy floor, for instance. And it's also a chance for me, Stuart, to remind people that for every 5 tradespeople that are retiring right now, 2 are replacing them.
Yeah, folks, you're probably wondering why I plugged this into the show. It has a lot of definition. It has a lot of meaning to it. And it has a lot of definition and meaning to what I'm basically trying to say on today's podcast in relevance to the variants, this whole COVID hysteria, folks, because it's more about political gain than actual public safety. And I said this many, many times, and I've proven to be right so far since talking about this key issue going on now 2.5, 3 years into this podcast, that I've made this podcast, I've made this key issue, this topic, very relevant on this show. And I've been right so far on a lot of key issues. And I will be proving my doubters right all the time. Because, folks, this is more about political meaning. Excuse me. Let me rephrase that. This is more about political gain than public health. It was never about public health. It was about control and empowerment from the far left. That's all they wanted to do. This was all a big revenge trip, a power trip, to get back at the American people because the radical left, or Democrats, of what you want to call them, felt like they've been betrayed by the American people when Donald Trump took office back in 2016. It was a big revenge plot from the beginning. They had to do something big. They had to come up with some type of plot, some type of plan to get back at the American people. And guess what, folks? We're suffering from it right now. We are paying the ultimate price through this pandemic, or plandemic, of what I called it. Been calling it. Now, you're going to ask me, like, Mike, what does this have to do with the variants? It has a lot to do with the variants. And the variants are going to come out literally day by day, month by month, year by year. This is not going to end. The only way this ends is if we, the people, put an end to it. A stop, a grand finale on this whole COVID crap. Because that's what it is, folks. It's crap. Now, back to the variants, okay? And I believe that plug-in I just made into today's show was relevant. Because not only are you seeing people, record numbers of people quitting their jobs. They're not quitting their jobs because they're lazy. Well, some are, don't get me wrong. But, most are quitting their jobs for better paying jobs. And most are just quitting their jobs because they're fed up with their employers laying the COVID restrictions on them. Oh, you must get the jab in order to keep your job. This is America, bub. This isn't, a third world nation where I have to show a freaking passport or paperwork in order to do something. Remember the words, folks. You are the people. We the people. We the people must not comply with this crap called COVID. We the people must not comply with their orders. We run the show, not the other way around. Remember that. It's in the Constitution. Look it up. It's free. Well, how can you get it? Just Google it, folks. It comes right up. Read the Constitution. It's all in there. Word for word. It's very, very easy to comprehend. Shock the hell out of you. Most of the words inside of it. Now, I want to get to these variants, folks, of just what these variants mean. The variants, the COVID variants, right? We're now on this variant 8, I believe. Now, everybody's like wondering, like, the variants, right? Like, how many variants are going to be out there? Well, we're up to variant 8. Now, a lot of people don't understand what I mean by this. I'll explain to you why there's going to be more variants and the reason behind the variants, okay? Now, we have these variants in America, these COVID variants. Well, what's the true meaning behind them? Okay, and I'll tell you, and maybe it'll make a little sense. Now, the true meaning behind these variants There's one reason behind them. And why are we going to see a lot more of these COVID variants? Now, folks, they need these variants to brainwash us more, right? To manipulate us more. Thinking that we need the government more than we think we need the government, right? Like the government is like this new form of God. Like we need to trust the government and trust their wording and their messages. Now, every single time, folks, there's a new variant. Do you notice there's like, along with that variant, there's another booster. You need to get another booster. One, where do you think the variants or the new variants are coming from? They're coming from the last booster that you just took. The bacteria in that booster shot is causing the mutation of the next variants. I just don't understand why people just don't understand that. The variants are being born from the last booster shot. And they're going to continue to form into another variant from the last booster shot. The more booster shots, I got to close this show soon because my throat is killing me. These allergies I'm battling are like severe, guys. The last booster shot you get will be the next new form of the variants. Now, in order to kill the variants, in order to kill this whole thing, we need to stop complying with the federal government's orders on getting booster shots. That's the only way, folks, you'll get rid of it. The only way. Hence, the word, do not comply with the variants.
A lot of excitement right now around the record speed vaccines for COVID-19, some of which are already starting distribution in parts of the world. But given that these are mRNA vaccines, a relatively new technology that has not been widely used before, we wanted to explain how they work and what happens to your body from the moment that needle touches your skin.
Like the vaccines we're used to seeing, these vaccines will be injected into the upper muscle of your arm. But unlike typical vaccines, which introduce inactive or weakened forms of a virus, these will release genetic material called messenger RNA. So what exactly does this mRNA do? Well, in a regular cell of your body, you have DNA inside of the nucleus. And this DNA stores all the information and instructions important to the functioning of your cells, your body, and ultimately makes you, you. Inside your cell is machinery that reads through your DNA and transcribes it into mRNA, which then leaves the nucleus and goes into your cytoplasm. And it's here that the ribosomes in your cells read the RNA, and depending on the specific code, build a series of amino acids which fold in on themselves to make proteins which keep you alive and functioning. This process is known as translation. In fact, it's this process that viruses take advantage of in the first place. They insert their own genetic information into you, and then your cell machinery unwittingly starts taking that information and building proteins to help create more viruses.
So back to the needle. The mRNA that is being injected into you from the vaccine also carries genetic instructions, but in this case, it's only coding for one small part of the virus, instead of the whole thing. You've probably seen SARS-CoV-2 represented like this, with the spikes on it, and it's this spike protein, which on its own is harmless, that the vaccine's mRNA codes for. The mRNA makes its way into the cytoplasm of your cells, where the ribosomes read the information and start to create the spike proteins. Once the protein is made, it goes to the cell membrane, and then your cell breaks down and destroys the injected mRNA instructions.
So what good does having a tiny fragment of viral spike in your body do? Well, it gives your body, and more importantly your immune system, a preview of what the virus looks like without causing disease. Suddenly, your antibodies will notice it and go, well, this doesn't belong here, which triggers an immune response to recognize and prepare your body for the real thing without ever having to come in contact with the actual virus itself.
Your immune system essentially gets a head start by creating powerful antibodies that can neutralize and kill the real virus. And this antibody memory is stored in your B cells so that if you are ever infected in the future with the SARS-CoV-2 virus, your body now has the upper hand. This is known as an adaptive immune response.
All right, guys, I want to stop it right there. The reason why I plugged that in is because this is the bullshit that they're feeding you. The bullshit. Now, after listening to that 2 minutes and 45-minute clip, do you feel more manipulated, or do you feel like, wow, this guy is really doing his best to protect us all and giving us wise information? No! You should feel more manipulated by this video I just plugged in. A simple 5-year-old can understand that everything behind this, folks, is all bullshit. It's all bullshit. You think that there's new variants coming out because it's a new disease? Folks, put your head together. Understand it more. The science behind all of this is manipulation. That's all it is. Yes, COVID might be a real virus. Might be real bacteria. But it's being manipulated by vaccines and booster shots. It's mutating into these variants. That's where it's truly coming from, folks. And a lot has to do with the manipulation from the mainstream media. That's all it is, folks. That's all it is. It's time to put this stuff to end. It's time to use common sense and bring back the right and healthy morale of this country. With that being said, guys, thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you on the next show.
You just heard an episode of the Patriot Angle Podcast, an Anchor platform.